Hello everyone, this is Reverend Dr. Roger Paul, and tonight we're going to study paper 95, the Melchizedek teachings in the Levant. Is that me? And that begins on page... Did he hear you? He did. Okay. That starts on page 1042. So let's say a little prayer and we'll get started. Father, thank you for bringing us together tonight to study this wonderful revelation. Pray that you'll be with us and open our hearts and minds that we might learn something, remember something, that we might teach others. Pray that you'll be with us during this meeting and bless these people that come and listen to this. Thank you and give you the praise in your Son's name, Jesus of Nazareth. Amen. The Melchizedek teachings in the Levant. As India gave rise to many of the religions and philosophies of Eastern Asia. Rodney, if you can hear us, put your headsets on. Your...
He's not showing up.
Huh?
He's not showing up.
Oh, it's not? Maybe it's me.
Lily, do you have your microphone muted? We're getting feedback.
You want me to put my headphones on?
You can if you want to. We were just getting feedback, Melly. That's what I was wondering.
I don't get feedback.
I don't hear it either now. Whatever it is, cleared up. Don't worry about it. Okay, as India gave rise to many religions and philosophies of Eastern Asia, so the Levant was the homeland of the face of the Occidental world. The Salem missionaries spread out all over southwestern Asia, through Palestine, Mesopotamia, Egypt, Iran, and Arabia, everywhere proclaiming the good news of the gospel of Melchizedek. In some of these lands, their teaching bore fruit. In others, they met with varying success. Sometimes their failures were due to the lack of wisdom, sometimes to circumstances beyond their control. Okay, number 1. Billy, you want to try the first one here? Salem religion in Mesopotamia?
Yes. Number 1. The Salem religion in Mesopotamia. By 2000 BC, the religions of Mesopotamia had just about lost the teachings of the Sephites and were largely under the influence of the primitive beliefs of two groups of invaders, the Bedouins, the Semites who had filtered in from the western desert, and the barbarian horsemen who had come down from the north.
Right, so...
Did you have feedback on that?
No, you sound good. Rodney, can you hear me? Is he out there?
Yes.
Rodney? Is he lying?
Can you read, Bobby? We can't hear you up yet. You can see your face up.
Go ahead and make it there.
But the custom of the early Andamite peoples in honoring the seventh day of the week never completely disappeared in Mesopotamia. Only during the Melchizedek era, the seventh day was regarded as the worst of bad luck. It was taboo ridden. It was unlawful to go on a journey, cook food, or make a fire on the evil seventh day. The Jews carried back to Palestine many of the Mesopotamian taboos, which they had found resting on the Babylonian observance of the seventh day, the Shomrishim.
And that's why some of the laws came from for the Jews too. Although the Salem teachers did much to refine and uplift the religions of Mesopotamia, they did not succeed in bringing their various peoples to the permanent recognition of one God. Such teaching gained the ascendancy for more than 150 years and then gradually gave way to the older belief in the multiplicity of deities. So it didn't last long. Men.
The Salem teachers greatly reduced the number of the gods of Mesopotamia, at one time bringing the chief deities down to 7: Bel, Shamash, Nabu, Anu, and Marduk, and Sin. At the height of the new teachings, they exalted 3 of these gods to supremacy over all others: the Babylonian triad, Bel, Yah, and Anu, the god of earth, sea, and sky. Still other triads grew up in different localities, all reminiscent of the Trinity teachings of the Andites and the Sumerians, and based on the belief of the Salemites in Melchizedek's insignia of the 3 circles.
So they chose these 3 gods in remembrance of what the Salemites taught about Melchizedek's insignia of 3 circles, which is God the Father, God the Son, God the Spirit, God, Trinity. Rodney, with this with me? No. Go ahead. Oh, sorry.
Never did the Salem teachers fully overcome the popularity of Ishtar, the mother of gods and the spirit of sex fertility. They did much to refine the worship of this goddess, but the Babylonians and their neighbors had never completely outgrown their distinguished form of sex worship.
Disguised.
Oh,
Distinguished.
distinguished forms of sex worship.
No, disguised.
Is it? That's it again. Okay, they're disguised. Let me start over. They did much to refine the worship of this goddess, but the Babylonians and their neighbors had never completely outgrown their disguised forms of sex worship. It had become a universal practice throughout Mesopotamia for all women to submit, at least once in early life, to the embrace of strangers. This was thought to be a devotion required by Ishtar, and it was believed that fertility was largely dependent on this sex sacrifice.
And then sex comes into the worship. And this is a picture of the Ishtar gate. The early progress of the Melchizedek teaching was highly gratifying until Nabonidus, the leader of the school at Kish, decided to make a concerted attack on the prevalent practices of temple harlotry. But the Salem missionaries failed in their effort to bring about this social reform. And in the wreck of this failure, all their more important spiritual and philosophic teachings went down in defeat. So when they tried to bring down the harlotry in the temple, they defeated them on all other things as well. Okay.
The early progress of the Melchizedek teachings.
Which one are you on?
Defeat.
Hey, I'm back. Can you guys hear me?
We
Yeah,
sure can.
now we can.
Yeah, oh well.
All right, good deal.
Let me go back one. No, let's just keep going. It's just a picture. You can look at it. Who's up? Millie? Millie? We're on 95.
Is this the one you want me to read?
Yeah, 95:17.
The defeat of the Salem gospel was immediately followed by a great increase in the cult of Ishtar, a ritual which had already invaded Palestine as Ishtoreth, Egypt as Isis, Greece as Aphrodite, and the northern tribes as Ashtart. And it was It was in connection with this revival of the worship of Ishtar that the Babylonian priests turned anew to stargazing. Astrology experienced its last great Mesopotamian revival. Fortune-telling became the vogue, and for centuries, the priesthood increasingly deteriorated.
So this was the last era of the, basically, the astrology being really popular. Trying to tell the future. Okay. Rodney, you want to take this one?
Yeah, sure. Melchizedek had warned his followers to teach about the one God, the Father, the Maker of all, and to preach only the gospel of divine favor through faith alone. But it has often been the error of the teachers of new truth to attempt too much, to attempt to supplant slow evolution by sudden revolution. The Melchizedek missionaries in Mesopotamia raised a moral standard too high for the people. They attempted too much, and their noble cause went down in defeat. They have been commissioned to preach a definite gospel, to proclaim the truth of the reality of the universal Father. But they became entangled in the apparently worthy cause of reforming the Moors. And thus was their great mission sidetracked and virtually lost in frustration and oblivion.
So because they tried to teach him too much too quick, they lost the whole mission, right? They lost the whole concept.
In one generation, the Salem headquarters of Kish came to an end, and the propaganda of the belief in one God virtually ceased throughout Mesopotamia. But remnants of the Salem schools persisted. Small bands scattered here and there continued their belief in the one Creator and fought against the idolatry and immorality of the Mesopotamian priests.
Well, these priests had a lot of power, didn't they?
Okay, but how do we do this? How do we take this preachers from it?
You couldn't hear that, Rodney?
What's that?
Did you say you couldn't hear us?
Well, I can just barely hear you. I was explaining, I wish I could get this Bluetooth going so I could hear you guys better, but I'm doing okay.
It was the Salem missionaries of the period following the rejection of their teaching who wrote many of the Old Testament Psalms, inscribing them on stone, where later-day Hebrew priests found them during the captivity and subsequently incorporated them into the collection of hymns ascribed to Jewish authorship. These beautiful Psalms from Babylon were not written in the temples of Bel Marduk, but were the work of the descendants of the early Salem missionaries, and they are a striking contrast to the magical conglomerations of the Babylonian priests. The book of Job is a fairly good reflection of the teachings of the Salem school of Kish and throughout Mesopotamia.
Interesting.
Yeah. Really interesting how throughout this paper they talk about some of the early Jewish writings and how they were, where they came from. Okay. Millie, you take the next one, please. Millie, turn on your mic. I can't hear you.
I can't hear you. What?
We couldn't hear you.
We couldn't hear you. Now we can.
You want me to read this?
Yes, please.
Much of the Mesopotamian religious culture found its way into Hebrew literature and liturgy by way of Egypt through the work of Amenemho and Akhenaten. The Egyptians remarkably preserved the teachings of social obligation derived from the earlier Andite Mesopotamians, and so largely lost by the later Babylonians who occupied the Euphrates Valley.
You recognize those names like Akhenaten is one of the pharaohs?
Yeah, the pyramids.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Pharaohs, one of the pharaohs of
The first one escapes me. I almost said Amenhotep, because that's the wrong one.
Yeah. No, I believe he was one of the kings.
And then
pharaohs. Yeah.
Don't know that one.
All right. Rodney, you want to take the next one?
All right. 2. Early Egyptian religion. The original Melchizedek teachings really took their deepest root in Egypt, from where they subsequently spread to Europe. The evolutionary religion of the Nile Valley was periodically augmented by the arrival of superior strains of Nadite, Adamite, and later Andite peoples of the Euphrates Valley. From time to time, many of the Egyptian civil administrators were Sumerians. As India in these days harbored the highest mixture of the world's races, so Egypt fostered the most thoroughly blended type of religious philosophy to be found on the rancho. And from the Nile Valley, it spread to many parts of the world. The Jews received much of their idea of the creation of the world from the Babylonians, but they derived the concept of divine providence from the Egyptians.
Because the Egyptians thought they were the most important, so they took that concept with them when Moses took them out of Egypt. All right.
It was political and moral, rather than philosophical or religious, tendencies that rendered Egypt more favorable to the Salem teaching than Mesopotamia. Each tribal leader in Egypt, after fighting his way to the throne, sought to perpetuate his dynasty by proclaiming his tribal god, the original deity and creator of all other gods. In this way, the Egyptians gradually got used to the idea of a super god, a stepping stone to the latter doctrine of a universal creator deity. The idea of monotheism wavered back and forth in Egypt for many centuries, the belief in one God always gaining ground, but never quite dominating the evolving concepts of polytheism.
For ages, the Egyptian peoples had been given to the worship of nature gods. More particularly, did each of the 2 separate tribes have a special Greek god, one worshiping the bull, another the lion, a third the ram, and so on. Still earlier, they had been totem tribes, very much like the Amerindians. We knew who the Amerindians are, don't you? Remember that, the American Indians? Okay. The totems stayed around in the Americas for longer than they did anywhere else. Especially on the coast along California and Oregon, some places.
We saw when we were in Alaska too.
Yeah. We still have them there.
You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
In time, the Egyptians observed that dead bodies placed in brickless graves were preserved, embalmed, by the action of the soda-impregnated sand, while those buried in brick vaults decayed. These observations led to those experiments which resulted in the later practice of embalming the dead. The Egyptians believed that preservation of the body facilitated one's passage through the future life, that the individual might properly be identified in the distant future after the decay of the body. They placed a burial statue in the tomb along with the corpse. carving a likeness on the coffin. The making of these burial statues led to great improvement in Egyptian art.
So it's the tombs that brought art along. Interesting. Rodney.
For centuries, the Egyptians placed their faith in tombs as the safeguard of the body and of subsequent pleasurable survival after death. The latter evolution of magical practices, while burdensome to the life from the cradle to the grave, most effectually delivered them from the religion of the tombs. The priests would inscribe the coffins with charm texts, which were believed to be protection against a, quote, man's having his heart taken away from him in the lethal world. Presently, a diverse assortment of these magical texts were collected and preserved as the Book of the Dead. But in the Nile Valley, magical ritual only became involved with the realms of conscience and character to a degree not often attained by the rituals of those days. And subsequently, it is ethical and moral ideals, rather than elaborate tunes, were depended upon for salvation.
So that's the way these tombs were part of their salvation. Okay. And this is some example of some of the inscriptions from the Book of the Dead.
The superstitions of these times are well illustrated by the general belief in the efficacy of spittle as a healing agent, an idea which had its origin in Egypt and spread therefrom to Arabia and Mesopotamia. In the legendary battle of Horus and Set, the young god lost his eye, and after Set was vanquished, his eye was restored by the wise god Thoth, who spat upon the wound and healed it.
The Egyptians long believed that the stars twinkled in the night sky represented the survivals of the souls of the worthy dead. Other survivors were thought were absorbed into the sun. During a certain period, solar veneration became a species of ancestor worship. The sloping entrance passage of the Great Pyramid pointed directly toward the pole star, that the soul of the king, when he emerged from the tomb, would go straight to the stationary and establish constellations of the fixed stars, the supposed abode of the kings. They have that special
the North Star.
Yeah, one of the programs about that, how that passageway points towards the North Star. Really?
When the oblique rays of the sun were observed penetrating earthward through the aperture in the clouds, it was believed that they betokened the letting down of a celestial stairway, whereon the king and other righteous souls might ascend. Quote, King Pepi has put down his radiance as a stairway under his feet, whereon to ascend to his mother. Thank you, King Pepi.
When Melchizedek appeared in the flesh, the Egyptians had a religion far above that of the surrounding peoples. They believed that a disembodied soul, if properly armed with magic formulas, could evade the intervening evil spirits and make its way to the judgment hall of Osiris, where if innocent of murder, robbery, falsehood, adultery, theft, and selfishness, it would be admitted to the realms of bliss. If this soul were weighed in the balances and found wanting, it would be consigned to hell, to the devouress, And this was relatively an advanced concept of a future life in comparison with the beliefs of many surrounding peoples. So this is one of the early concepts of the afterlife.
Heaven or hell?
Heaven or hell, that's right. Really? You're again.
The concept of judgment in the hereafter for the sins of one's life in the flesh on earth was carried over into Hebrew theology from Egypt. The word judgment appears only once in the entire book of Hebrew Psalms, and that particular psalm was written by an Egyptian.
That's when you have to come. I just skipped it. Here we go. Rodney, did you take that one, please?
Yes. 3. Evolution of moral concepts. Although the culture and religion of Egypt were chiefly derived from antique Mesopotamia and largely transmitted to subsequent civilizations through the Hebrews and Greeks, much, very much, of the social and ethical idealism of the Egyptians arose in the valley of the Nile as a purely evolutionary development. Notwithstanding the important importation of much truth and culture of antique origin, there evolved in Egypt more of moral culture as a purely human development than appeared by similar natural techniques in any other circumscribed area prior to the story of Michael.
Mesopotamia is very important. Right? Okay.
Moral evolution is not wholly dependent on revelation. High moral concepts can be derived from man's own experience. Man can even evolve spiritual values and derive cosmic insight from his personal experiential living, because the divine spirit indwells him. Such natural evolutions of conscience and character are also augmented by the periodic arrival of teachers of truth. In ancient times from the second Eden, later on from Melchizedek's headquarters at Salem.
So through your own experiential experience, you can develop these values on your own. Right? Thousands of years before the Salem gospel penetrated to Egypt, its moral leader taught justice, fairness, and the avoidance of avarice. 3,000 years before the Hebrew scriptures were written, the motto of the Egyptian was, "Established is the man whose standard is righteousness, who walks according to its way." They taught gentleness, moderation, and discretion. The message of one of the great teachers of this epoch was, "Do right and deal justly with all." The Egyptian triad of this age was truth, justice, and righteousness. Of all the purely human religions of Urantia, none ever surpassed the social ideals and the moral grandeur of this one-time humanism of the Nile Valley. So we're on a pretty good track. Really?
In the, ready?
Yeah.
In the soil of these evolving ethical ideas and moral ideals, the surviving doctrines of the Semitic religion flourished. The concepts of good and evil found ready response in the hearts of a people who believe that, quote, life is given to the peaceful and death to the guilty, unquote. Peaceful is he who does what is loved, and the guilty is he who does what is hated. For centuries, the inhabitants of the Mound Valley had lived by these emerging ethical social standards before they ever entertained the later concepts of right and wrong, good and bad.
Rodney?
Egypt was intellectual and moral, but not overly spiritual. In 6,000 years, only 4 great prophets rose among the Egyptians.
Amenemhat.
How do you say that?
Amenemhat.
They followed for a season. Akban, they murdered. Akhenaten, they accepted, and not half-heartedly for one short generation. Moses, they rejected. Again, was it political rather than religious circumstances that made it easy for Abraham and, later on, for Joseph to exert great influence throughout Egypt in behalf of the Salem teachings of one God? But when the Salem missionaries first entered Egypt, they encountered this highly ethical culture of evolution blended with the modified moral standards of Mesopotamian immigrants. These early Nile Valley teachers were the first to proclaim conscience as the mandate of God, the voice of deity.
I almost realized I thought of this, didn't you?
Yeah, I know.
I'm gonna skip it.
For the teachings of the minimal. In due time there grew up in Egypt a teacher called by many the Son of Man, and by others Amenemhat. The seer exalted conscience to its highest pinnacle of arbitrament between right and wrong, taught punishment for sin, and proclaimed salvation through calling upon the solar deity.
Sorry, I was trying to get rid of this.
I don't have the software up to me on yours.
Okay. And Amenemhat taught that riches and fortune were the gift of God, and this concept thoroughly colored the later occurring Hebrew philosophy. The noble teacher believed that God consciousness was the determining factor in all conduct, that every moment should be lived in the realization of the presence of and the responsibility to God. The teachings of this sage were subsequently translated into Hebrew and became the sacred book of that people long before the Old Testament was reduced to writing. The chief preachment of this good man had to do with instructing his son in uprightness and honesty in governmental positions of trust. And these noble sentiments of long ago would do honor to any modern statement. Amen. Really?
This wise man of the Nile taught that riches take themselves wings and fly away, that all things earthly are effervescent. His great prayer was to be saved from fear. He exhorted all. He exhorted all to turn away from the words of men and to access the acts of God. In substance, he taught, man proposes, but God disposes. You get that? Translated into Hebrew, determined the philosophy of the Old Testament book of Proverbs. Translated into Greek, that gave color to all subsequent Hellenic religious philosophy. And later, Alexandrian philosopher Philo possessed a copy of the Book of Wisdom.
Right.
The minimum function to conserve the ethics of evolution and the morals of revelation, and in his writings passed them all, both to the Hebrews and to the Greeks. He was not the greatest of the religious teachers of this age, but he was the most influential in that he colored the subsequent thought of two vital links in the growth of Occidental civilization: the Hebrews, among whom evolved the acme of Occidental religious faith, and the Greeks, who developed pure philosophic thought to its greatest European heights.
Interesting how these different leaders and their concepts built things up over time, right?
In the book of Hebrew Proverbs, chapters 15, 17, 20, and chapter 22, verse 17, to chapter 24, verse 22, are taken almost verbatim from Amenemot's Book of Wisdom. The first psalm of the Hebrew book of Psalms was written by Amenemot and is the heart of the teachings of Enoch.
Interesting how much of the Old Testament did not originate with the Jews and the Hebrews. The remarkable Enoch. The teachings of Amenemot were slowly losing their hold on the Egyptian mind when, through the influence of an Egyptian Salamite physician, a woman of the royal family espoused the Melchizedek teachings. This woman prevailed upon her son, Akhenaten, Pharaoh of Egypt, to accept these doctrines of one God. This is a picture of Akhenaten. Young king, or young pharaoh.
He was great.
Really?
Bill, you need to unmute your mic. I can't hear you.
I can't hear you either. Since the disappearance of Melchizedek in the flesh, no human being up to that time had possessed such an amazing and clear concept of the revealed religion of Salem as Akhenaten. In some respects, this young Egyptian king is one of the most remarkable persons in human history. During this time of increasing spiritual depression in Mesopotamia, he kept alive the doctrine of Elyon, the one God, El Elyon, the one God, in Egypt, thus maintaining the philosophic monotheistic channel which was vital to the religious background of the then future bestowal of Michael. And it was in recognition of this exploit, among other reasons, that the child Jesus was taken to Egypt, where some of the spiritual successors of Akhenaten saw him and to some extent understood certain phrases of his divine mission to launch.
So they were waiting for someone like Jesus in Egypt when Jesus came.
Moses, the greatest character between Melchizedek and Jesus, was the joint gift to the world of the Hebrew race and the Egyptian royal family, and had Akhenaten possessed the versatility and ability of Moses, had he manifested a political genius to match his surprising religious leadership, then would Egypt have become the great monotheistic nation of that age. And if this had happened, it is barely possible that Jesus might have lived the greater portion of his mortal life in Egypt. Interesting.
Never in all history did any king so methodically proceed to swing a whole nation from polytheism to monotheism, as did the extraordinary Akhenaten. With the most amazing determination, this young ruler broke with the past, changed his name, abandoned his capital, built an entirely new city, and created a new art and literature for a whole people. But he went too fast. He built too much, more than he could stand when he had gone. Again, he failed to provide for the material stability and prosperity of his people, all of which reacted unfavorably against his religious teachings when the subsequent floods of adversity and oppression swept over the Egyptians.
Had this man an amazing clear vision, an extraordinary single-mindedness of purpose, had the political sagacity of Moses, he would have changed the whole history of the evolution of religion and the revelation of truth in the Occidental world. During his lifetime, he was able to curb the activities of the priests, whom he generally discredited, but they maintained their cults in secret, sprang into action as soon as the young king passed from power, and they were not slow to connect all of Egypt's subsequent troubles with the establishment of monotheism during his reign. They blamed it all on having one God.
Very wisely, Akhenaten sought to establish monotheism under the guise of the sun god. His decision to approach the worship of the universal Father by absorbing all gods into the worship of the sun was due to the counsel of the Salamite physician. Akhenaten took the generalized doctrines of the then existent Anton faith regarding the fatherhood and motherhood of deity and increased a religion which recognized an intimate worshipful relationship between man and God.
Akhenaten was wise enough to maintain the outward worship of Aton, the sun god, while he led his associates in the disguised worship of the one God, creator of Anton and supreme father of all. This young teacher king was a prolific writer, being author of the exposition entitled, quote, The One God, unquote, a book of 31 chapters, which the priest, when returned to power, utterly destroyed. Akhenaten also wrote 137 hymns, 12 of which are now preserved in the Old Testament book of Psalms, credited to Hebrew authorship.
So 12 of the Psalms came from Akhenaten.
The supreme word of Akhenaten's religion and daily life was righteousness, and he rapidly expanded the concept of right, doing to embrace international as well as national ethics. This was a generation of amazing personal piety, and was characterized by a genuine aspiration among the more intelligent men and women to find God and to know Him. In those days, social position or wealth gave no Egyptian any advantage in the eyes of the law. The family life of Egypt did much to preserve and augment the moral culture, and was the inspiration of the latter superb family life of the Jews in Palestine.
The fatal weakness of Newton's gospel was its greatest truth, the teaching that Anton was not only the creator of Egypt, but also the whole world, man and beast, and all foreign lands, even Syria and Cush, besides this land of Egypt. He sets all in their place and provides all with their needs. These concepts of deity were high and exalted, but they were not nationalistic. Such sentiments of internationality in religion failed to augment the moral of the Egyptian army on the battlefield, while they provided effective weapons for the priest to use against the young king of his new religion. He had a deity concept far above that of the later Hebrews, but was too advanced to serve the purpose of a nation builder. Really?
Though the monotheistic ideal suffered with the passing of Akhenaten, the idea of one God persisted in the minds of many groups. The son-in-law of Akhenaten went along with the priest back to the worship of old gods, changing his name to Tutankhamun. The capital returned to Thebes, and the priest waxed fat upon the land, eventually gaining possession of 1/7 of all of Egypt, and presently one of the same order of priests made bold to seize the crown.
Okay, so King Tut, or Tutankhamun, was the son-in-law of Akhenaten. That's in the reign. And the next one to come up was one of the priests. Ronnie.
Yes, but the priests could not fully overcome the monotheistic way. Increasingly, they were compelled to combine and hyphenate their gods. More and more, the family of gods contracted Akhenaten. More and more, the family of gods contracted Akhenaten had associated the flaming disk of the heavens with the Creator God. And this idea continued to flame up in the hearts of men, even of the priests, long after the young reformer had passed on. Never did the concept of monotheism die out of the hearts of men in Egypt and in the world. It persisted even to the arrival of the Creator, Son of the same divine power, the one God whom Akhenaten had so zealously proclaimed for the worship of all Egypt.
The weakness of Akhenaten's doctrine lay in the fact that he proposed such an advanced religion that only the educated Egyptians could fully comprehend his teaching. The rank and file of the agricultural laborers never really grasped the gospel and were therefore ready to return to priests, to the old-time worship of Isis and her consort Osiris, who were supposed to have been miraculously resurrected from a cruel death at the hands of Set, the god of darkness and evil.
The teaching of immortality for all men was too advanced for the Egyptians. Only kings and the rich were promised a resurrection. Therefore did they so carefully embalm and preserve their bodies in tombs against the day of judgment. But the democracy of salvation and resurrection as taught by Akhenaten eventually prevailed, even to the extent that the Egyptians later believed in the survival of dumb animals.
Dumb animals?
Yeah, that's why they put cats and dogs and things like that in the graves, in the tombs.
They're calling my dog dumb? Anyway.
Although the effort of this Egyptian ruler to impose the worship of one God upon his people appeared to fail, it should be recorded that the repercussions of his work persisted for centuries, both in Palestine and Greece, and that Egypt thus became the agent for transmitting the combined evolutionary culture of the Nile and the revelatory religion of the Euphrates to all of the subsequent peoples of the Alphabet.
The glory of this great era of moral development and spiritual growth in the Nile Valley was rapidly passing at about the time of the national life of the Hebrews was beginning. And consequent upon their sojourn in Egypt, these Bedouins carried away much of these teachings and perpetuated many of Levant's doctrines in their racial religion. Take the next one, please.
6. The Salem doctrines in Iran. From Palestine, some of the Melchizedek missionaries passed on through Mesopotamia and to the great Iranian plateau. For more than 500 years, the Salem teachers made headway in Iran, and the whole nation was swinging to the Melchizedek religion when a change of rulers precipitated a bitter persecution which practically ended the monotheistic teachings of the Salem cult. The doctrine of the Abrahamic covenant was virtually extinct in Persia when, in that great century of moral renaissance, the 6th before Christ, Zoroaster appeared to revive the smoldering embers of the Salem gospel. And so it goes.
And so it goes. Rodney?
This founder of a new religion was a virile and adventurous youth who, on his first pilgrimage to Ur in Mesopotamia, had learned other traditions of the Caligastia and the Lucifer rebellion, along with many other traditions, all of which had made a strong appeal to his religious nature. Accordingly, as a result of a dream while in Ur, he settled upon a program of returning to his northern home to undertake the remodeling of the religion of his people. He had imbibed the Hebraic idea of a God of justice, the Mosaic concept of divinity. The idea of a supreme God was clear in his mind, and he set down all other gods as devils, consigned them to the ranks of the demons of which he had heard in Mesopotamia. He had learned of the story of the 7 master spirits, as the tradition lingered in Ur, and accordingly he created a galaxy of 7 supreme gods with Mazda at its head. These subordinate gods he associated with the idealization of right, law, good thought, noble government, holy character, health, and immortality.
This is Zoroaster.
And this new religion was one of action, work, not prayers and rituals. Its God was a being of supreme wisdom and the patron of civilization. He was a militant religious philosophy. It was a militant religious philosophy which dared to battle with evil, inaction, and backwardness.
Zoroaster did not teach the worship of fire, but sought to utilize the flame as a symbol of pure and wise spirit and universal and supreme dominance. All too true, his later followers did both reverence and worship the symbolic fire. Finally, upon the conversion of an Iranian prince, this new religion was spread by the sword, and Zoroaster heroically died in battle for that which he believed was the truth of the is this is a vessel that basically shows the eternal life concept of Zoroastrian and the tree of life.
Oh, interesting.
Lily?
Millie, you gotta turn your mic on.
I got it. Zoroastrianism is the only Urantian creed that perpetuates the Dalmatian and Edenic teachings about the seven master spirits. While failing to evolve the Trinity concept, it did, in a certain way, approach that the God of sevenfold. Original Zoroastrianism was not a pure dualism, though the early teachings did picture evil as a time coordinate of goodness. It was definitely eternity submerged in the ultimate reality of the good. Only in later time did the belief gain credence that good and evil contended on equal terms.
So that was not Zoroaster's concept. So it developed into. Right.
The Jewish traditions of heaven and hell and the doctrine of devils, as recorded in the Hebrew scriptures, founded on the lingering traditions of Lucifer and Caligastia, were principally derived from the Zoroastrians during the times when the Jews were under the political and cultural dominance of the Persians. Zoroaster, like the Egyptians, taught the, quote, day of judgment, unquote. But he connected this event with the end of the world.
Even the religion which succeeded Zoroastrianism in Persia was markedly influenced by it. When the Iranian priests sought to overthrow the teachings of Zoroaster, they had resurrected the ancient worship of Mithra, and Mithraism spread throughout the Levant and Mediterranean regions, being for some time a contemporary of both Judaism and Christianity. The teachings of Zoroaster thus came successfully to impress three great religions, Judaism and Christianity, and through them, Mohammedanism.
But it is a far cry from the exalted teachings and the noble songs of Zoroaster to the modern perversions of his gospel by the Pharisees with their great fear of the dead, coupled with the entertainment of beliefs and sophistries, which Zoroaster never stooped to countenance.
What does sophistries mean? I forgot.
Sophistries would be impressive,
Luxurious,
what do you call the things that the priests do?
rituals.
Rituals.
So like bragging about stuff?
No, rituals. Yeah. Rituals to impress. Basically.
Sorry, just did it and then left.
Back to dumb animals.
Thanks, Billy.
This one should,
6'9".
69.
No, 6'9". 95, 6'9".
this great man was one of that. Yes, this great man was one of that unique group that sprang up in the 6th century before Christ, to keep the light of Salem from being fully and finally extinguished, as to do so dimly burned to show man in his darkened world the path of light leading to everlasting life.
And so Zoroaster did a lot of good. And Mithraism was the one that impressed Paul the Apostle, right? There's a lot of Mithraic concepts in Paul's Gospels. Rodney, would you take on 7, please?
Yeah, sure will. Here we go. 7. The same teachings in Arabia. The Melchizedek teachings of the one God became established in the Arabian desert at a comparatively recent date. As in Greece, so in Arabia, the same missionaries failed because of their misunderstanding of Melchizedek's instructions regarding overall organization. But they were not thus hindered by their interpretation of his admonition against all efforts to extend the gospel to military force or civil impulsion.
So he was totally against that, right?
Not even in China or Rome did the Melchizedek teachings fail more completely than in this desert region so very near Salem itself. Long after the majority of the peoples of the Orient and Occident had become respectfully Buddhist and Christian, the desert of Arabia continued as it had for thousands of years. Each tribe worshipped its own olden fetish, and many individual families had their own household gods. Long the struggle continued between Babylonian Ishtar, Hebrew Yahweh, Iranian Ahura, and Christian Father of the Lord Jesus Christ. Never was one concept able fully to displace the others.
Here and there throughout Arabia were families and clans that held on to a hazy idea of the one God. Such groups treasured the traditions of Melchizedek, Abraham, Moses, and Zoroaster. There were numerous sinners that might have responded to the Jesus-only gospel, but the Christian missionaries of the desert lands were an austere and unyielding group in contrast with the compromisers and innovators who functioned as missionaries as the Mediterranean countries. Had the followers of Jesus taken more seriously his injunction to go into all the world and preach the gospel, and had they been more gracious in that preaching, less stringent in collateral social requirements of their own devising, then many lands would gladly have received the simple gospel of the carpenter's son, Arabia among them. Really?
Despite the fact that the great Levantine monotheisms failed to take root in Arabia, this desert land was capable of producing a faith which, though less demanding in its social requirements, was nonetheless monotheistic.
There was only one factor of a tribal, racial, or national nature about the primitive and unorganized beliefs of the desert, and that was the peculiar and general respect which almost all Arabian tribes were willing to pay to a certain black stone fetish in a certain temple at Mecca. This point of common contact and reverence subsequently led to the establishment of the Islamic religion. But Yahweh, the volcano spirit, was to the Jewish Semites, the Kaaba stone became to the Arabic peasant.
The strength of Islam had been its clear-cut and well-defined presentation of Allah as the one and only deity. Its weakness, the association of military force with its promulgation, together with its degradation of women, was steadfastly held to its presentation of the one universal deity of all, who knows the invisible and the visible. He is the merciful and the compassionate. Truly God is plenteous in goodness to all men, and when I am sick, it is he who heals me. For whenever as many as three speak together, God is present as a fourth, for he is he not. The first and the last, also the seen and the hidden. Presented by Melchizedek, Levant.
That's it. Next time we're going to paper 96. We know it all the way through that paper. 96, God of the Hebrews. Yahweh, God of the Hebrews. Say a little prayer and we'll close for the night. Rodney, would you like to close us tonight?
Sure. Heavenly Father, we are so thankful we had the opportunity to meet tonight. And I found this very interesting, and we hope to pass what we've learned on to other people. And this is great history. And we ask for all of these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. And before y'all hang up tonight, let me mention something. Say good night to everybody at home. Thank you for joining us. Please come again.